So I think that I was suffering for a while because I failed to recognize the lack of sincerity in most people throughout the world, and so then after realizing that and looking back at the things you write, it really resonated with me. I'm now hopeful that we could see a significant rise in sincerity in general, essentially what you would say is people that are actively looking for the truth. Do you think that's possible or likely?
Yeah, where this question is headed is in the direction of complete untruth. There is no we. There's no group anything. Everyone is the masses. There's only any attempt to look at the we as a collective is a waste of time. It is simply an avoidance of oneself. There's only what's inside you, not we. Something else that must be understood, not as a compulsion, but to the person to whom it speaks. And it isn't a good thing if it does speak to them. Is that wherever you go in this society, in this world, even if you look at chat rooms and such, it's all full of drivel. It's all full of socialization. It is all an attempt to talk about menial things, and not that it's better to talk about intellectual things. But everything in a human being's life is to pass the time. This is what human beings do. They pass the time. If one examines his or her own life, naturally they might have a job, or they might have somewhere to punch a clock, or they might have to go to the office, or even if they're the CEO, they have to show their face. And I suppose such things are necessities for some people. But even the things that they do at the so-called workplace and what they do outside of it, it's all chores. It's all putting out fires. It's all relief from pain. It is all search for pleasure. It is all an empty chase. A human being's entire life is nothing but an empty chase. It is all empty socialization. And that isn't a good or bad thing. There's a particular human who will hear that and say, well, it is what it is, and that's what I like to do. And there's no problem with that. And there's a different human being who looks at that and says, well, that actually it's true. And that's eye-opening for me, and I don't want it to be that way anymore. And that isn't a good thing to realize that. Human beings have different levels of receptivity. Human beings are at different stages in their life in which they are more ready for the truth versus not, because the truth isn't a good thing, and one is not a good person for following the truth. It is what someone is ready for. They are. But I will say that the human being who's on a genuine path to truth is the human beings whose suffering eventually comes to an end. And the human beings on the path to society and friendship and socialization and relationship and trying to make themselves feel good and chasing happiness and trying to seek validation and have others like them and the whole societal game, that isn't a bad thing, but that can only lead to pain. That can only lead to misery. That can only lead to frustration. That can only lead to anxiety. There is nowhere else that can lead. Now, that isn't a deterrent. One should not feel deterred from pursuing the path of empty socialization, because if that's what's in their heart, then no intellectual deterrent will sway them from that. So at the end of the day, it is all about finding the truth of where someone really is. There is no good and there is no bad and there is no right and there is no wrong. You can better yourself day and night. You can read 900 self-help books a year if you wish. It will not do anything for you. You might become a little bit more this and a little bit less that. But at the end of the day, you'll remain the same. You will remain under the same illusions. Wherever a human being really wants to go is where they really want to go. And there are no rules. There are no precepts. There are no concepts. There are no stipulations. Spirituality is a farce. Self-help is an empty shell game. Friendship leads to enemies. Relationships lead to conflict. All things in the end go nowhere. And that does not mean that one need to separate themselves from it. It only means that if they wish to see the truth, that they can see things for what they are, while they very, very well engage with it. But to do something while knowing the emptiness and the strings behind the stage is one thing. But to do it while feeling that it is real when it ultimately is not, that only leads to endless misery.
Creativity or creation is, as you've said previously, it's like our God state, this infinite state that a human can be in. Whenever I think about entrepreneurship, I keep on coming back to this idea that it is just an abstraction or a more socially accepted form of slavery, but that is at odds with my own thinking. So I was wondering if you have any comments, statements, or questions.
Well, it doesn't matter what it is. It only matters what you're driven to do. And if you're driven to do X, but intellectually and conceptually you believe that X is wrong, it doesn't really matter, because the drive to do it will supersede your intellectualization of it being wrong.